There is a specific kind of silence that parents fear more than anything else in the world. It isn't the quiet of a sleeping house, settled and peaceful after a long day. It isn't the silence of a library or a church. It is the silence of a phone that rings and rings and rings without an answer. It is the digital silence of a text message marked delivered but never read. For a parent, that silence is a void, and on the morning of Sunday, October 8th, 2017, that void opened up beneath the feet of Alina Sheykhet. Welcome. Tonight, we are examining a case that shakes the very foundation of what we believe about safety, about justice, and about the systems designed to protect us. This is not just a story of a crime. It is a story of a systemic failure. It is the story of a young woman who did everything society tells victims to do. She identified the threat. She left the abuser. She went to the police. She stood in a courtroom and secured a court order. She did everything right. And yet, on a cold October morning in the University District of Oakland, Pittsburgh, evil still found a way to climb the walls. This is the murder of Alina Sheykhet. To understand the darkness that descended on Cable Place that night, we must first understand the light that it extinguished. Before she was a headline, before she was a case number in a homicide file, Alina Sheykhet was a force of nature. Born in Russia, she immigrated to the United States with her parents, Yen and Ellie, when she was just a small child. They settled in the suburbs of Pittsburgh, chasing the American dream, and Alina became the embodiment of that hope. She was the kind of person who didn't just walk into a room. She danced into it, quite literally. Alina was a ballroom dancer. If you know anything about that world, you know it requires a unique duality. On the outside, it is all sequence, smiles, grace, and fluidity. But underneath the makeup and the lights, it requires an iron will. It requires a toughness to push through blistered feet, exhausted muscles, and grueling rehearsals. Alina had that grit. She was described by everyone who knew her as vivacious, opinionated, and fiercely loyal. She was a helper. By the age of 20, she was a junior at the University of Pittsburgh, studying with a clear goal in mind. She wanted to become a physical therapist. She wanted to spend her life healing broken bodies, helping people find their strength again. She loved animals. She loved her brother, and she loved life with a voracious appetite. But in the narrative of her life, a shadow appeared during her freshman year. His name was Matthew Darby. He was a basketball player at a nearby college, the University of Pittsburgh at Greensburg. On the surface, it looked like a typical collegiate romance. He was athletic, charming, and attentive, but as we so often see in cases of domestic violence, that attention was merely the camouflage for control. For roughly 2 years, Alina lived within the tightening grip of Matthew Darby's insecurity. Friends later recall the signs that are so easy to miss in the moment, but so glaring in hindsight. He checked up on her constantly. He needed to know where she was, who she was with, and why she wasn't answering him immediately. He dictated her social life. He criticized her choices. The relationship was a cycle of emotional manipulation, disguised as love. But Alina was not a victim by nature. She was a fighter. By the summer of 2017, she recognized that this wasn't love. It was possession, and she decided to break free. She ended the relationship. She told her friends she was done. She was ready to focus on her studies, her dancing, and her future. She thought the chapter was closed. She thought she had reclaimed her life. But for a man like Matthew Darby, a woman's independence is not a right. It is an insult. He did not view the breakup as a conclusion. He viewed it as a challenge. The escalation was rapid and terrifying. The danger didn't start on the night of the murder. It started weeks prior. On September 20th, 2017, just weeks before her death, Alina was settling into her new life in a shared house on Cable Place in Oakland. It's a dense neighborhood, packed with students, row houses, and narrow streets. It feels safe because there are always people around. But safety is an illusion when someone is hunting you. That night, Alina and her roommates heard a noise. It wasn't at the door. It was at the window. Matthew Darby had not come to knock. He had come to invade, like a predator. He scaled the side of the building, climbing a drain pipe to reach the second floor. He forced the window open and climbed into the sanctity of her home. Imagine the terror of seeing the face of your ex-boyfriend, a man you were trying to escape, climbing through your window in the middle of the night. Alina and her roommates did exactly what they were supposed to do. They didn't try to handle it themselves. They called 911. The police arrived. Matthew Darby was arrested and charged with felony criminal trespass. This was the moment where the system should have clamped down. This was a bright red flare signaling imminent danger. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a home invasion by an obsessed ex-partner. The next day, Alina went to court. She filed for protection from abuse order, known as a PFA. In her handwritten statement to the judge, she detailed the abuse. She detailed the fear. She asked the legal system to build a wall between her and Matthew Darby. The judge granted the order. A temporary PFA was issued. Matthew Darby was legally commanded to have no contact with Alina Sheykhet. No calls, no texts, no visits. He was released on bond, a free man, with a piece of paper telling him to stay away. Alina walked out of that courthouse believing she was protected. She carried that paper like a shield. But what she didn't know, what so many victims don't realize until it's too late, is that a restraining order is only a boundary for those who respect the law. For those who have already decided to break the social contract, a PFA is just paper. It cannot stop a bullet. It cannot stop a hammer. It cannot stop a monster. In the days following the PFA, Matthew Darby's life was unraveling. He was facing felony charges for the break-in. He was suspended from his university. And, unbeknownst to Alina, the darkness in him was spreading to others. Just days before Alina's murder, Darby was arrested in Indiana County, Pennsylvania, for a completely separate incident. He was charged with rape. A teenage girl had come forward. The allegations were horrific. So, here we have a man facing felony trespassing charges in one county and rape charges in another. He is spiraling. He is losing his status, his freedom, and his reputation. Psychologists often point to this moment, the loss of control, as the most dangerous time for a domestic abuser. When they feel their world collapsing, they often seek to destroy the object of their obsession. This was the powder keg. And on October 8th, the spark was lit. Let's walk through the timeline of that fateful weekend. It was Saturday, October 7th. The air was crisp, typical for autumn in Pennsylvania. Alina was happy. She was moving forward. She spent the evening with her roommates and friends. There was laughter. There was normalcy. She was a 20-year-old girl living her life. She was communicating with her parents about their plans for the next morning. They were going to attend a breast cancer awareness walk together. Alina was a kind of daughter who didn't flake on her parents. Around 1 a.m., the house on Cable Place quieted down. The roommates went to their separate rooms. Alina went into her bedroom on the ground floor. She closed the door. She likely checked her phone one last time. She went to sleep. But while the city slept, a figure was moving to the shadows of Oakland. We know this because of the digital footprint we all leave behind and the surveillance state we live in. Security cameras from local businesses and residences captured a figure dressed in dark, baggy clothing. He wasn't walking aimlessly. He was moving with purpose. At 3:19 a.m., the figure approaches a residence on Cable Place. It is Matthew Darby. He knows the house. He knows the layout. He knows where she sleeps. He doesn't go to the front door. He prowls the perimeter. He attempts to find a weakness in the fortress. Eventually, he finds it. He locates an entry point, believed to be through the basement or a back window. He slips inside. Now, pause and imagine the silence of that house. The roommates are asleep upstairs. Alina is asleep in her bed. The intruder moves through the dark, navigating the familiar hallways. He is not there to talk. He is not there to reconcile. The evidence suggests he came prepared for slaughter. He has a construction hammer. And once inside, he arms himself further with 2 knives taken from the kitchen. What happened next in that bedroom is a scene of horror that defies comprehension. It was a blitz attack. Alina was likely asleep when the first blow landed. There was no argument. There was no fight. There was only rage. The violence was extreme. It was overkill. The use of a hammer and two knives indicates a level of personal hatred that goes beyond simple murder. He didn't just want to kill her. He wanted to destroy her. He fractured her skull. He inflicted sharp force trauma. He silenced the bright, dancing light of Alina Sheykhet in the most brutal way possible. And then he left. At roughly 4:20 a.m., surveillance cameras capture Matthew Darby walking away from the house. He isn't running. He is walking. He stops at a sewer grate nearby. He drops the hammer into the darkness below. He continues walking. He finds a dumpster at a local high school. He discards the knives. He acts with the cold calculation of a man who believes he has accomplished his mission. He calls a car service. He disappears into the pre-dawn mist, leaving behind a shattered family and a crime scene that would haunt first responders for years. The sun rose. The world woke up. But Alina didn't. At 8:30 a.m., Sheykhet arrived to pick up his daughter. He parked his car. He checked his phone. No text. He called her. It went to voicemail. He called again. Nothing. He walked up the steps to the house. He knocked. No answer. He pushed the door open. He called out, "Alina?" The house was silent. He saw her roommates, groggy, waking up. They hadn't seen her since the night before. A knot of dread tightened in Yan's stomach. He walked to her bedroom door. He pushed it open. The scream that Sheykhet released in that moment was the sound of a heart breaking beyond repair. He found his daughter on the floor. There was blood everywhere. It was a scene of absolute carnage. He ran out of the house, collapsing on the sidewalk, screaming for help, screaming in a language of grief that needs no translation. Police swarmed the scene. Paramedics arrived, but there was nothing to be done. Alina had been dead for hours. The investigation began immediately, and it didn't take long for the focus to narrow. The police found the PFA paperwork. They knew about the break-in weeks prior. They knew about Matthew Darby. But Darby was gone. He wasn't at his apartment. He wasn't at school. He was in the wind. The manhunt that followed was intense. The city of Pittsburgh was on edge. A brutal killer was on the loose. The police utilized cell phone triangulation. They tracked his movements. They found the driver who had picked him up that morning. The driver, unaware he was transporting a murderer, had driven Darby away from the scene. Authorities tracked him across state lines. He had fled south. For 3 days, Alina's family had endured the agony of planning a funeral while knowing the monster was still free. They lived in fear that he might come back, or that he might hurt someone else. Finally, on October 11th, 3 days after the murder, the police caught a break. Matthew Darby was spotted in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He was cornered at a residence. He didn't fight. He didn't run. He surrendered. In the booking photos, his face is a mask of indifference. There is no sorrow in his eyes. There is no panic, just a blank, hollow stare. He was extradited back to Pennsylvania to face charges of criminal homicide. The evidence against him was overwhelming. The surveillance video placed him at the scene. The murder weapons, the hammer and knives, were recovered from the sewer and dumpster where cameras showed him discarding them. DNA evidence linked him to the crime. His cell phone records painted a map of his movements directly to Alina's door. The district attorney of Allegheny County announced they would seek the death penalty. The brutality of the crime, the premeditation, the violation of the PFA, and the burglary all compounded to make this a capital case. For a year, the legal gears turned. The defense tried to find angles, but the facts were immutable. In October 2018, exactly 1 year after Alina was taken, the case came to a resolution. To spare the Sheykhet family the trauma of a lengthy trial, the graphic autopsy photos, and the agonizing uncertainty of years of appeals, a plea deal was reached. Matthew Darby pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. He stood in the courtroom, shackled, facing the family he had destroyed. When the judge asked him if he had anything to say, if he wanted to offer an apology or an explanation, Darby remained stoic. He offered nothing. He simply accepted his fate. The judge sentenced Matthew Darby to life in prison without the possibility of parole. It is the only sentence that fits. He will die in a concrete box. He will never again see the sun rise as a free man. He will never hurt another woman. But for the Sheykhet family, the concept of justice is a bitter pill. As Yen Sheykhet told the court, he is still alive, he can breathe, he can eat. My daughter is in the ground. The sentencing was the end of the legal battle, but it was the beginning of a new war for Alina's parents. In the wake of her death, they were left with a burning question. Why? Not just why did he do it, but why was he allowed to? Why was a man who climbed a drain pipe to break into a home allowed to walk free on bail? Why was a man facing rape charges in another county not monitored? Why was the PFA just a piece of paper? They realized that the system was reactive, not proactive. It punished abusers after they struck, but it did very little to stop them before the fatal blow. Alina's parents turned their grief into action. They began to lobby for legislative change. They proposed Alina's Law. The premise of Alina's Law is simple but revolutionary. It would give judges the power to order electronic monitoring, GPS ankle bracelets for defendants in domestic violence cases, specifically those who violate PFAs. If a defendant enters an exclusion zone, like the victim's home or workplace, the GPS would alert the police immediately. Imagine if Alina's Law had been in place in 2017. Imagine if Matthew Darby had been wearing an ankle monitor. The moment he stepped onto Cable Place at 3:19 a.m., an alarm would have triggered. Police could have been dispatched before he ever found that window. Alina might still be here. She might be a physical therapist today. She might be married. She might be a mother. But that technology was not used. The system relied on the honor system of a man who had no honor. The fight for Alina's Law has been long and difficult. Bureaucracy moves slowly. There are debates about funding, about civil liberties, about implementation. But Yen and Ellie Sheykhet have never stopped fighting. They appear at rallies. They speak to legislators. They tell Alina's story to anyone who will listen. They do this not because it will bring Alina back, but because they know there's another Alina out there right now. There's another girl sitting in a courtroom, holding a piece of paper, believing she is safe. And they want to make sure that girl survives. As we come to the end of the story, I want you to think about the image of Alina, not the crime scene photos, not the tragedy. I want you to picture the dancer. Picture her on the floor under the bright lights of a competition. The music starts. She moves with precision and passion. She is strong. She is beautiful. She is full of life. That is who she was. That is who she should still be. Her best friend stood up in court during the sentencing and looked directly at Matthew Darby. She said, "You may have taken her body, but you will never touch her soul. Her light is too bright for your darkness to extinguish." Alina Sheykhet was 20 years old. She did everything right. She trusted the law to protect her, and the law failed. Her story is a wake-up call. It is a reminder that domestic violence is not a private matter. It is a public health crisis. It is a reminder that a restraining order is a tool, but it is not a shield. And it is a reminder that we must do better. We must listen to victims when they say they are afraid. We must close the loopholes that allow predators to walk free. Tonight, as you lock your doors and check your phones, remember Alina. Remember her smile. And remember that silence is where violence thrives. We must keep talking about her. We must keep saying her name. Because as long as we remember her, the darkness does not win. Alina Sheykhet, a daughter, a dreamer, a dancer, gone, but never, ever forgotten. This has been a documentary presentation of the murder of Alina Sheykhet. Thank you for listening.